to go back downstairs, and there's restrooms on your left. Once the hearing item that you're here for has been completed, you are welcome to leave the hearing. And if needed, we'll have a 10-minute break around 3 o'clock if our agenda goes that far. So speaking of the agenda, we'll have Mr. Bert Drost come up and tell us, do we have any changes from the printed agenda?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Planner for the City of Des Moines. The only three changes I was going to have today were to suggest moving items 9, 11, and 13 to the consent portion of the agenda.
Okay.
Item 9 is the appeal for conditional use permit at 440 East Grand Avenue. Number 11 is a request for a variance at 4319 Kingman Boulevard. And number 13 is a request for two variances at 3401 Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. Staff has recommended approval of these three, and the applicants agree to the conditions, and we've received no opposition to these three. So,
is there anybody here in the audience who would be opposed to us granting the requested permits or variances in items 9, 11, or 13? Anybody here with a concern on 9, 11, or 13? Okay, seeing none, would there be a motion to move those items to the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
All right, got a motion by John. Second by Marlis. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, 6-0. So what I'm going to do here real quick, and just as a reminder for everybody, if anybody was here for item 6 or item 12, item 6 was a request for some special permits, variances, and exceptions at 1215 Aurora, and item 12 was an exception request at 1332 East Ovid. Those two items, again, 6 and 12, have been removed. The applicant withdrew their request for consideration. So if you were here for items 6 or 12, we're not going to hear those at all. Otherwise, I'm going to read through items 1 through 5 just briefly. We would be planning to vote to approve items 1 through 5 and also adding 9, 11, and 13, unless there's anybody in this audience opposed to us granting those. So item 1 would be a special permit request at 1419 and 1425 Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. Is there anybody opposed to that? Seeing none, item 2 would be an exception request at 321 Tonawanda Drive. Anybody opposed to that? Seeing none. Item 3 would be an exception request at, looks like 401 Southeast 5th Street. If anybody's opposed to that, please raise your hand. Seeing none. Item 4 is an exception request by Fairway Stores at 3000 Southeast 22nd Street. Anyone opposed to that? Okay, seeing none. Then item 5 would be conditional use permit request at 1101 Hickman Road by the City of Des Moines. Any opposition there? All right, seeing no hands. So then we have items 1 through 5, 9, 11, and 13. Would there be a motion to grant approval of these items?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion by John.
I'll second.
Second by Marlis. We'll be consistent. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, that motion carries 6-0. So if you were here for items 1 through 5, 9, 11, or 13, they have been approved, and you'll get your decision in order with those approvals by mid next week. So I appreciate you coming in on those items, and now we'll focus on what's on our regular portion of the agenda. I believe, Mr. Dross, that would bring us then to item 7, a variance request at 1300 Southeast 1st Street.
all right. Mr. Chair, members of the board, item number 7 is a request for a variance to the definition of accessory structure. It would allow for retention of a portable storage container on the property that's being used for storage. The subject property is the Mullet's Restaurant located on the west side of Southeast 1st Street, just to the south of the confluence of the Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers. They've been using this storage container on the southern portion of their property for some time, just for storage. And as this board knows, we've seen some variances like this in the past where any accessory structure needs to be constructed in accordance with a building permit, in accordance with all building codes, and these storage containers do not meet the building codes. Here's a picture of the storage container. It's just located to the west of the parking lot. Here's a better view of it. The variance, if granted, would allow it in perpetuity. I think the applicant, I'll let them address this, but I believe they are willing to just ask for a limited time if that's more appealing to the board. But here's the consent map. We didn't get any cards back in support or in opposition. Staff didn't believe that they've met the criteria necessary for granting a variance. We feel that any permanent accessory structure should be of a more durable design and designed to look like an accessory structure so that it blends in with the surrounding neighborhood. So we have recommended denial of the variance. So, any questions?
Bert, just a brief one. The lot would have sufficient size. They would, by right, be allowed to build an accessory structure of up to a certain amount of square foot, would they not?
Since it's commercial, there's no limit on how big their accessory structure could
Okay.
be. It would just have to meet building setbacks.
Okay, all right. And they have to keep 40% open space or whatever, okay.
20% open.
20%, okay. But there is an option that, yes, if they want to store stuff over a repeated period of time, they would, within legal right, be able to build a structure,
Right.
permanent structure according to building code and site plan requirements to do so.
Correct.
Okay? All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so the way this works in this part, applicant or representative of the applicant can step up first, and you've got up to 10 minutes to present your reasoning for your appeal. Good afternoon, welcome.
Welcome. How you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Okay, so
We just need your name and address for the
Yep.
record.
1300 Southeast First Street, Zachary McEwen.
Okay, all right, thank
And
you, Zachary.
we're just asking for extra time. What happened was the place that we had all this stuff stored sold their building, and we had to move it very short-handed. So we just got the pod and put it there, and then, I never bought it, but the person in charge thought that that was all right. And we're just asking for time to, we have a shed there that we are looking to build on within the city, city limits. But we're just asking for maybe a year to get that all done. That bridge that connects Moines to Principal Park is actually currently closed. We do not know how that will affect the business. We just want to make sure that we have the funds to do everything correctly.
Okay.
Zach,
Yeah, go ahead,
Mr. Chair,
Cindy.
how long has the pod been there?
The pod has been there for a few months, I do believe so. I don't know the exact date on that, but it has been there for a little bit.
So another business moved and you bought their items, or?
No, it currently holds like coolers, old utensils and just all kinds of stuff like that pertaining to the actual building itself that we had in storage that we don't need in our business anymore, but keep on hand. And that was in an old storage place, but like I said, they sold, so we just had to move it last minute.
So you want a full year? You think it's going to take a year for you to build a shed, and that's based on financial constraints, or?
Not necessarily. We don't think it will take a year, but we just kind of want to see because we're not very busy in the winter, because we're going to be a lot busier when the summer comes, and he just wants to make sure that all the funds are good to build something big, or big enough to hold all that stuff,
Well, Zachary, generally speaking, sometimes if we grant a variance, we just grant it, but generally speaking, you gotta meet a real hardship requirement to get that done. Sometimes we've granted temporary variances, but we like to see them be generally temporary. From my perspective, if we looked at a year, okay, well, then that would take you to spring of 2020.
Right.
Most people aren't doing much for construction in the wintertime. So what if we said we give you like a 6 months plus, which would be to the end
That would
of,
be
let's say,
perfect.
this calendar year?
Right.
Just like,
He told me to ask for just a year, but I'm sure that the end of the summer would do, because then we'll go into our slower time anyways.
Right.
But I believe that would.
Right. I mean, sometimes October, November, still great time to, finish final construction, but if we
Right.
said maybe, just have it be done by the end of this calendar year
Yeah.
as a potential.
Right.
Would that be something amenable to make everything work?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
And I think in the past, I've been to your fine establishment a number of
Yeah.
times. You have a wide-ranging menu of all kinds of nice
Oh, yeah.
things. But what I've always found is you've had a lot of stuff coming and going over the last few years with events and bicycle events and
Yep.
some outdoor stuff. But if you did get a more permanent building, I would hope that would allow you to kind of not have to kind of have a rubber band effect on some of this stuff. You
Right.
have room to store and room to get ready for events, all of course still yet within zoning.
Right, exactly.
And how long have you been employed or involved with ownership there?
I'm not an owner, but I've worked there for over 6 years.
All right,
so
yeah, so you've
I
been
know
there
how
as
it
long
goes.
as anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yep. Okay, all right, excellent. Any other questions for Zachary? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so the way the hearing works now, is there anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Seeing none, is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the applicant? Seeing none, do we have any further questions for staff? Okay, if none, we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. Thoughts from the members?
Yes, I wouldn't mind giving him an extension. I just don't want to go a year. That's way too long.
Sure. What if we maybe looked at into December, so then, yeah, storage container's gone, they've had plenty of time to plan and do construction, and everything's buttoned up by the winter for storage and construction.
So that's giving them 11 months, because it's already been there for 3.
I'm looking at from today's date rather than an enforcement date.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of, from decision-making forward.
That would be 8 months about.
Yeah. I mean, it's just point of discussion. We can have a proposal from any direction, from granting what's requested to an amendment therein or denying the variance. So, but just conversationally, that was the thought that I had till the end of the year.
I think make it the end of the year sounds easily enforceable, or say the end of November, because that's kind of when you're going to be done constructing anyway, getting ready for Christmas traffic, that type of thing. So either November, December, I think sounds fair. It sounds like they had their things stored off-site and they had to find someplace quick for them, and somebody thought was a quick solution.
Right.
But that should give them time to get an adequate building and get permits pulled and
Yep.
any site plans that might need to be as a result of that. So I'm fine with either November or December.
Okay. Well, why don't I just throw something out? We'll see if it sinks or swims. I'm going to make a motion then to grant a temporary variance to allow for the retention of the portable storage container in the general vicinity where it's placed now. That shall expire on December 31st, 2019, and at that time, applicant either removes the temporary portable storage container. If they choose to build a accessory structure within building code according to requirements by that time, that's fine. That sound okay?
Yeah, I'll
right.
second that.
All right, so we got a motion, and a second. All those in favor of the requested temporary variance, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? 1. Okay, all right, so motion carries 5-1. So we're giving you a little more than halfway on that, so. All right, keep up the good work down there, Zachary. You got a fun place. From breakfast till midnight, good place to be. Okay, you bet. Have a good day. All right, that'll bring us into item 8. We have a conditional use permit and variance request at 207 Crocker Street.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, item number 8 is a request for a conditional use permit that would allow for a hotel that's under construction to have a lounge area with an outdoor patio. Since it's not considered to be a restaurant, it does require a conditional use permit for a tavern, even though it's not necessarily going to be a tavern type use, but that is the closest use we have in our code to what they want to do. The subject property is located on the north, just to the north of Wells Fargo Arena. It's a former office building that's being converted to a Fairfield Inn hotel. The subject property is zoned C2, where the blue line is a zoning boundary. So you can see the properties immediately to the south and to the west are currently zoned C3, and the property immediately to the east is zoned DR. The reason I point that out is because those zoning districts don't require any separation distance from parks, churches, schools, or daycares. But since this property is zoned C2, it is subject to the separation distance requirements. And there is a city park immediately across Second Avenue to the east here. So it only provides 150 feet of separation. I'm sorry, it provides 100 feet of separation from that park, whereas it's supposed to provide at least 150 feet of separation. Therefore, in addition to the conditional use permit, it also needs a variance to a separation distance requirement. And we have visited with the applicant about possibly rezoning their property to a C3 district, which would be highly appropriate since it's in the downtown area. It's immediately adjoining C3 on two sides. However, they are hoping to open in June, so they wouldn't be able to get through the rezoning process in time, which is why they're pursuing this conditional use permit and variance. 'Cause even if they did rezone it to C3, they would still need a conditional use permit. They just wouldn't need the variance to the separation distance. So here's a floor plan. You can see the lounge would be on the southeast corner of the first floor of the building, and then they would have an outdoor patio that's along the east side of the building. Here are some photos. You can see it's nearing completion. They're putting the siding on right now. The patio is in this area here, just to the east of the building. And then this is looking across Second Avenue to the east at the city's park. The new skate park that's going to be built would be just over the hill here. And then one more picture of the patio. And then the consent map, we did not get any cards back in support or opposition. So as you'll see in the staff recommendation, staff has recommended denial since it's a variance. And as you know, the test that someone has to meet to obtain a variance is pretty hard. So we have recommended denial of the variance to the separation distance, and as a result, also had to recommend denial of the conditional use permit. However, you'll also see that we did put some potential conditions in here if the board is inclined to grant the variance in the conditional use permit. So any questions for me?
Questions for Bert?
Yeah, hey Bert, how far is Buzzard Billy's from this place?
I'm sorry, is the what?
How far is Buzzard Billy's from this place? Are they in violation too, or
No, they're zone C3. They're 3 or 4
So it's just
blocks.
because of zoning?
It's right. So, yeah, like I said, if it was, you can see C3 is located immediately to the west, immediately to the south. DR is immediately to the east. Both of those zoning districts don't require any separation distance, but because this property is zoned C2, it is subject to the separation.
Did the surrounding properties, did they request to be changed?
To be honest, I don't know. I think
That
they've
seems
been
like a-
C3 for decades.
Why didn't we rezone this one?
It was an office building at that time.
In hindsight, I mean, it's an office building. There's also a Quality Inn hotel immediately to the north.
Right.
Does the Quality Inn have a?
think they
well,
have-
but because they're zoned, they don't have to worry about this. So this
Well, they're
is,
zoned C2, but
It's because it's outdoor within 100,
No.
well, it's service not related to a restaurant. I'm assuming
Right.
that the bar in the hotel to the north is in a restaurant.
that's my assumption too. And it might have been,
Well, yeah, I know,
Previous.
yeah, they've been around
are there any
forever.
hotels downtown that don't serve alcohol?
That'd be a bad business
don't
model.
know.
Be hard to find one.
I don't know if the Hampton Inn on.
I think there's got to be a workaround on this.
Yeah.
This is a pretty reasonable request.
Right.
I know you guys are pretty black and white. But okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why if you read our recommendation, we did recommend denial, but also had these conditions in case the board was inclined.
And Bert, to drill down a little bit more in this, you would reference, well, they don't have time to rezone to get this allowed. But as I recall, more than a year and a half ago, we knew this was going to be a hotel. They were in front of us for just the wimpy 5-foot setback for green space on the south side. So why was this not on a site plan then or
Well-
discussed at that time?
I think they'd always known they needed the conditional use permit. It wasn't until I was reviewing the application that I realized, oh crap, it doesn't meet the separation distance requirement. So I think it was realized too late in the
Okay.
game.
All right.
So.
And related to the issue that it's so close to the park, I know by zoning and just setting a park as a park, regardless of how it's used, but do you have any kind of conceptual or site plan for how the skate park will lay out? I mean, are we gonna have little kids straight east of there up by the sidewalk doing stuff, or is that gonna be down over the berm, over the
Yeah,
hill?
I've seen the site plan. I didn't think to bring it with me today, but there is a sidewalk connection that kind of, what do you call it?
Pull you into it
Switch
there.
back
Sure, sure.
down, so
Okay.
the skate park would be substantially lower. There's quite a few retaining walls as well, so it's built into the hillside.
So it'd be stepped down, so if I'm on the patio, odds are people aren't gonna be seeing a big party or vice versa.
Right,
Okay.
and you do have a 4-lane highway
Right,
separating,
yes,
which is
yes,
probably gonna
4-lane
drown out
roadway,
anyways.
right.
Yeah.
So right now, is there a park there, or is there just
Well, it's
going to
currently
be
a
a
public
park?
parkland.
It's
just
park land, but
undeveloped.
there's not like swing sets and such
No.
there.
Yeah, just maybe 200 feet south
Yep.
of here, there is that bobber.
Yeah,
Looks
yeah,
like a
the-
fishing bobber.
Okay, that's
sculpture.
all that's there, because I was just there
Right.
with my grandsons
Right.
Yeah.
in one little swing thing, and I was thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice to have more things here for children?
Yeah.
So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot there.
Yeah, so it's gonna change massively within the
Right.
next year to two, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll let the applicant have a stab at it. You guys can have up to 10 minutes to present your reasoning for your variance request.
Good afternoon, Kalpesh Patel, 207 Crocker Street here. So I think you guys have made some of the points that we're kind of hoping to I guess, convince you of. I will point out the hotel to the north has had a liquor license for a number of years. They canceled it last June when they renovated that hotel to a Comfort Inn. I think they closed the restaurant at the time. I have no idea how much business they did food-wise or otherwise. I just know they did have a liquor license. So if they fall under the 50% rule or not, that I'm not aware of. I guess our couple of points for us are, we believe that this board would give this conditional use permit if it was zoned differently. So really, it's a realistic matter of, do we go through the whole process of rezoning this just to be back here to do the same thing?
Right.
So that's one point. The other one is, yeah, it's parkland, but there's, as you said, there's really nothing there. I understand the skate park's there. There's a lot of grade. But we don't feel like there'd be a ton of interaction between that space and the hotel itself. And then the third point really for us to make is, we're not a bar. It really is an amenity to the hotel. We're not going to be doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars of liquor sales. Yeah, we call it a bar area, but that bar is basically built in the middle of our breakfast area. The patio is going to be there irregardless of whether we sell liquor or not. It's all part of the amenities package for this hotel in the market. So those are kind of our 3 points we'd like you to consider, and hopefully saying, hey, we can get some sort of variance to this. We comply, we will or would or will comply with all the other things that are there. And then one of the other points, it's always been in the site plan that there was a bar there. I guess, again, we never applied for it early enough, so it never got caught in some of the earlier discussions. So I'll answer any questions if you have some.
So you're serving no food at all with the alcohol sales? How do you envision this being used?
Basically, we're gonna have light snacks at most. So, maybe a frozen pizza or a hot sandwich type of thing that can go. Basically, no cookers, no cooktops, no fryers, turbo chef oven at the most, or convection oven. We might be doing like wings or some cheese sticks or something. But realistically, we're not planning to do very much food at all out of this thing. The Fairfield Inn is a corporate travel-based hotel. You'll get a lot of business customers. They typically want to have a drink when they get off. A lot of the times the company's paying for the drink. So it's just an amenity. They like to be able to stay at a hotel where they can come down, have a drink, go to their room, go to bed.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak in support of the applicant? Okay, good enough. We'll take that. Anybody here to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, we'll close public, unless there's any questions for staff, we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. I guess the easy part of this, just to maybe help stimulate this conversation. If we look at a conditional use permit request, I think they would easily meet the requirements for a conditional use permit, including proposed location, design, construction, operation adequately safeguards health, safety, general welfare of people in the area. It will separated sufficiently from adjoining residential areas. It won't increase congestion on the streets. It will not constitute a nuisance, etc. That's the easy part. I think we could easily grant that. Under the variance test, a variance can't be contrary to the public interest. I don't think it would be in this case. The spirit of the chapter should still be observed and substantial justice done. I think if we granted the variance, it still would be. And it certainly won't alter the essential character of the locality. Now, while we may have different zoning districts, people don't see those signs or those boundaries. The locality is generally an entertainment, social, urban district. This is secondary. This is not a bar that wants to locate here by itself, an entire tavern. It's an accessory use related to a hotel. So, from a variance standpoint, yeah, it's a pretty high bar, but by the same token, this is a pretty low-risk variance request, at least from my perspective.
Well, and as Dave asked, is there any hotels that don't have us available? I mean, I just came back from a trip where I stayed at a hotel where we didn't have this. It might have been nice after flight delays.
Yeah,
But if all the other hotels in the area offer the same service,
right.
and it's not going to be a thing where let's go there because they've got, this great pizza. It's going to be a simple thing and just more of a wind down at the end of the day type thing. I see no big issue with it.
I do have one question for staff. If we granted a conditional use permit and a variance here, could they still come back and rezone it later? And if they did, would they need a conditional use permit then?
Yeah, if it were Zone C3, it would still need a
Because
conditional
of the
use
50% sales?
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
so there may be no advantage, because otherwise I might say, well, let's grant him a temporary variance and then he gets it rezoned.
Right.
But if he would still need a conditional use permit, that part wouldn't change anyway.
Right.
Okay.
And with the new zoning ordinance that's under review, it's likely that this property would be rezoned to a DX1 district that wouldn't have separation distances in
Oh,
there either.
okay, well, DX1, that sounds easy to remember. Just a joke, sorry.
Yeah, I need another acronym in my life.
Downtown X1 district, right?
Yeah.
Something. Yeah. No, I'm being sarcastic. Okay. All right, thanks for answering that. So if maybe that helps a little bit for the board here. Would there be a motion either way then?
I'll make a motion to grant the variance in the conditional use permit based on the recommendations from the city staff listed within our documents.
Okay. All right. All right, if that's clear enough, we got a motion and a second. All those that would be in favor of granting the requested variance and conditional use permit, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All right. With that extensive additional support, this passes. You bet. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming in today. Good deal. Okay. That will then bring us to item 10, a special permit request at 3826 Grand Avenue.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this item, I was actually hoping to move to the consent agenda as well, but we did have 5 comment cards come back in opposition, so I held off on putting it or suggesting it be moved. Subject property is located on the south side of Grand Avenue. The owner of that property is a licensed therapist and is wanting to relocate her business to her house. Since she's a licensed professional, the zoning code currently would allow her to have her office in her house, but it would not allow her to have 2 non-resident employees, which she's wanting to have 2 non-resident employees. Which is why she's needing the special permit for a home occupation. And the home occupation does allow you to have up to 2 non-resident employees. So the special permit is the route she has to go. Again, it's a single-family house on the south side of Grand Avenue. It's located in an area that contains a mix of church uses, apartment or condo uses. former church use. And then I believe there's a built-as single family next door to her that's been converted into apartments. Here's the floor plan that shows how she would configure her basement. So it would have 3 offices, which, as you can see from this, it's designed so that some future owner could just use these these basement offices as bedrooms. So she's not proposing to make any changes that would hinder it from being used as a single-family residence in the future. And then here's a photo of the house. This was taken from Google Street View rather than an actual site photo. And then the consent map, all 8 of the comment cards that we received were from condo owners in the Barbican condos there to the west. She does have a fairly long driveway that kind of makes a hammerhead here, so there is opportunity for about 4 cars to be parked back there in the rear yard area. Staff looked at the criteria necessary for granting this special permit, and we felt that she satisfies all of these requirements, given that she's only employing 2 non-resident employees. So we have recommended approval, subject to this long list of conditions, and really all these are the conditions that all special permits for home occupations are subject to, just reiterated. And I just clarify, on condition number 2, we have clarified it to say that no more than 2 non-resident employees shall be engaged or employed in the business upon the premise. So we had individuals, but we felt that changing it to employees would just make it more clear what our intent was. So. Any questions for me?
One question I would have, Bert, or actually 2. First one would be, and I need to make sure I understand this, a home occupation and a special permit, does that normally allow for non-resident individuals, non-family members to work there?
Yeah. If you read in section, chapter 134, section 1326, the criteria for home occupation, the second one is no more than 2 non-resident individuals shall be engaged or employed in the business.
So how is it many times we've asked applicants, now this can only be you or your family members that live there, you can't have anybody else coming there? Was that because we were concerned about traffic congestion or parking on streets, that kind of things?
Yeah,
Okay.
if there's like a construction crew coming to the house.
Okay.
And then leaving their cars parked there all day
Right.
long and then leaving.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I know that has been a recurring theme. And a related thing, you showed a picture of the driveway. Can you put that up there again? This appears to be like Model T 1920 driveway. It's a single lane. So with bushes and stuff there, hey, I'm coming in for my appointment, somebody else is leaving.
Right, and again, this was off of Google Street View.
Sure. But I'm just by the width of the sidewalks there, et cetera, I'm thinking this is a 1-lane driveway.
Yeah.
So did you take that into account? If we've got, 3 therapists there and let's say somebody's got an hour session, even if they're staggered, you're gonna have a new car every 20 minutes coming and going, both ways.
Possibly, yeah. But again, the driveway back here is a hammerhead.
For parking and maneuvering.
Cars backing out of the garage can
Okay,
head out rather than have to back out.
sure.
the driveway.
As long as
But you're
nobody's
right.
coming in at them, then they'd be able to get out.
Right.
Okay, because otherwise we're gonna,
Yeah,
somebody's gonna have to give.
Are there,
Okay.
there's some other businesses along there, Bert, that
There are.
have been granted this permit? I mean, I know there's an architect that's closer to St. Augustine's on the north side.
Yeah, I think some of the properties along Grand are zone CO, which is a commercial residential district,
Okay.
which allows for the office uses,
Right.
whereas
But I
this
know-
one is still zoned R3.
Yeah, and I know not
Yeah,
necessarily
so
on
you can
Grand.
see, like, I think where the Baldwin architecture
Yep.
is here at zone CO, which allows for,
So this wouldn't be a stretch.
no.
And I know that, I know up on Ingersoll, there's a whole bunch of orthodontists, because my kids have gone to them.
Yeah,
And they're in houses
right,
all along there, and there's people coming and going, and there's nurses, and there's everybody else with,
yeah.
and assistants there, so this wouldn't be
No.
anything.
And if she was operating as the only employee of this business, she'd be allowed by right. She wouldn't even need the,
Sure, and we
Special
understand
permit.
that,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
While this is in the R3, even if there may or may not be some other business uses, Could you remind me again, the house or structure directly to the east and west, what those direct uses are?
Sure. This was a built-as single-family that's
Okay.
been converted to apartments.
All
You
right.
can kind of see,
Got it, yep.
there's,
See the staircases
tacky
and stuff.
staircases on the front. And then
Yeah.
It looks like the one to the west might still be a single-family.
Okay. All right,
Is there room to make that the driveway wider? Because I'm kind of worried with, there's not street parking really on Grand, and you're gonna have somebody maybe is intimidated driving on that, and then to have another car and maneuvering. Is there a way to make that driveway wider?
Looks like there might be a pinch point here at the side of the house. I would say yes, she could widen it in the front yard, but then it looks like when you get to the side, it might
don't
not
have
be
that,
possible
okay.
to widen it too much.
any other questions for Bert? Okay, all right, thank you, sir. All right, applicant or representative of the applicant? Good afternoon, welcome.
I'm Rhonda Hood, and my address 3826 Grand Avenue. And so I'm the owner, manager, therapist for Heart and Mind Counseling.
Okay.
So, and I
You're
have,
currently doing this at another location, but live here, correct?
right, yes. I'm currently about 5 blocks away on Ingersoll.
Sure.
And so I'm wanting to move to the home office, and then the special variance, I don't know
Yeah.
the terminology.
Yep, you're on
Is
it.
to have 2 other offices for either other therapists or some sort of healing sort of. I haven't quite gotten that far, just after I had this.
So they're really not your employees, you'd be subletting them.
I would be contracting them. Yes.
So Rhonda, at this time, 5 blocks away, is it just you and yourself at the practice, or do you already have 2 other therapists or
No.
other subs?
I'm affiliated with Prairie Wellness right now, but I am at a separate part of the
Right.
building as Heart and Mind Counseling.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, which just consists of you right now?
Just me.
Yeah, okay, all right, I've got it. Okay, all right.
Well, how many clients a day or an hour, or, I mean, just, let's think
Yeah, good
broadly. You have this going, and you have 2 other folks, 2 other therapists and yourself. Would they be 20-minute sessions 10 times a day? I think the issue is traffic and potential disruption to the neighborhood. I mean, that's what we have to look at in making our decisions.
I would have to consider who I contract to because of traffic. So there's 2 parking spots in front of my garage behind my house. And then there's another, like Bert said, like a hammerhead. So there's 2 other places for 2 other people could park potentially. And so folks could pull around and pull out onto Grand. And so I have about 55-minute sessions, and I have anywhere from 5 to 8 sessions a day. And so that will, and so if it's another therapist, it would be likewise, that they would have anywhere from 4 to 8 sessions, 50-minute sessions a day. And so I see individuals and couples, so.
So I hear you have 4 parking spaces, 2 in front of the garage and 2 on the Hammerhead.
Yes.
But I see that you're going to be needing a minimum 6 spaces, because if each person has 1 client at a time, and you have your car, where are the 6 spaces? And sometimes, and I don't know what kind of counseling you do, if it's marital counseling where people might be coming separately in cars, or everybody comes in 1 car. I just don't know if the parking issue is valid, especially with not knowing who the other people are that are going to be doing the therapy work. They're not employees. They're really not.
I don't know that I'm going to contract it to therapists. I haven't given that much. I was meeting this milestone before I go there. Parking is going to be a consideration of who will contract it, who I will have a contract with parking will be a consideration, because I won't be able to have 6 people coming and going at one time. It may be a family attorney there. It may be massage therapist. It may be, but it won't be high traffic. I can't have high traffic. I don't have, at this time, I need to see where my property lines are, whether, like, to the east, is that parking, or is that apartment building that has a great big parking lot for like 8 people, or maybe 12. And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to expand and make a bigger parking lot back there or not. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm not sure I answered your question, Lynn, satisfactorily.
I don't know. I'm having some reservations right now, and I don't know if you can answer them.
Is there
Okay.
parking on
There's
any of the
unknown.
streets around there?
On 38th, there probably would be. I wouldn't want folks to be crossing Grand Avenue. It's quite busy.
Yeah.
There is, so to the east is that apartment building, and then there's 38th.
Uh-huh.
So folks could, if I did have potentially some parking problems, they could park there.
Sure.
And come over to, because folks are going to come up my patio and down the stairs to the practice.
No, that wouldn't be unreasonable if that's
Yeah, it would be,
Possible.
it wouldn't be a long distance for
Sure.
them to walk.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're gonna have a whole bunch of cars anyway, but you may have more than that would be convenient to get in and out of your driveway
Right.
at times. Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right, well, we'll give you a break for now, so
Okay.
thank you very much, Rhonda, and we'll check back with you in a minute here. Is there anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Seeing none, is there anybody here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, do we have any further questions for staff? And I've got one I do want to ask. Bert, under the applicable requirements for home occupations, it says that not more than 1/2 of the area of one floor level of the dwelling shall be used for such business. So the way you've got that basement laid out, if we've got 1, 2, 3 office areas, and I would assume hallways and restrooms would be part of the business use, isn't that more than 1/2 of one area or one level?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing it's even in here as a condition. So
Yeah.
that was an oversight.
And again, I'm not trying to pick on you
Right,
today.
I could throw somebody under the bus very well.
But as I'm just kind of reading through the conditions, you know, it's important to see what are the applicable requirements. I don't want to necessarily want to prove something that would be in conflict with the rules, but secondly, I want to look at the rules to make sure that our reasoning would fit the allowance for this activity as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, from
So-
the floor plan, it looks like there might be, is there space under the garage too? No, okay. Show the door here going there. but-
Yeah, there's a door then.
Because it's a tuck under garage, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then it might be right at half of the floor level.
Well, look at you.
Grasping for straws here.
Yeah, because that was your logic from square one, right? That the garage was part of the floor plan. Don't answer that. Okay.
I got a question. Does it make a difference that these are not employees, that she's going to be renting the space out? Does that then become office space instead of a home-based business?
It would all have to be done as one business, and I think her business, if I'm hearing right, is she wants to be a one-stop stress management shop. So everything that, all of her people that she would contract with would be in the stress management field.
So she couldn't
A
have an
family attorney
attorney
stress
there.
management?
Yeah.
Okay.
But she couldn't have like an attorney then, potentially.
Well,
I don't know.
Unless he was a stress management attorney or something
There are
like
some
that. I mean, we're talking about a home-based business, and to me, this feels like it's kind of melding away and kind of going
It
off
sounds
the
like
edge a
it's
little
being an
bit.
office building and
let's-
she's
Yeah,
renting
it's-
out.
Let's bring that back to our conversation for,
Right,
but those are good points. But yeah, to go to Bert though, if she was subleasing, if these people then were contractors on their own or had their own, LLC business, even if they were to the customer, it might seem like they're all one, but if they were getting separate incomes and they're not paid as direct employees, then I would say then we've got subletting of businesses here, wouldn't we? And she may or may not have thought through that model yet fully enough. But, if I'm Warm Stone Therapy and I want to have my own little room there, and then I'm charging the customer for my share, then I'm a business, and she'd be subletting to me. Versus we do 3 different things, all under her, under one bill, and she's paying the employees. To me, that'd be the home occupation.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
I don't
all
know
right.
if Sue has an interpretation, I'll let her.
Sure, which could be helpful.
Chair, members of the board, I would say that that's a correct interpretation. If she had a business where she was hiring 2 people and she paid them, then that would be the home occupation. But when you start opening it up to 3 individual people charging their own, it's more of a business office rather than a home occupation.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, any other questions for staff? Rhonda, I'm going to give you an opportunity here, since we did ask kind of some probing questions to staff. If you want to close with anything for a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, you're welcome to add anything else before we go to our deliberation. Feel free to step back up. And Glenna, did you have anything? No, okay.
My specialty is working with stress management and with stressed out individuals and professionals, and there's a lot of them in Des Moines. Business is very good. And I work with couples, and sometimes that leads to family issues, family, whether it be divorce or custody issues. And so, again, I have not thought out completely what that will look like when it comes to managing your stress, or it being a one-stop shop, whether it be 2 other therapists that are under Heart and Mind, or if it is an attorney, a family law person. I just know I make referrals sometimes because sometimes relationships don't work out. Again, mostly working with stressed out professionals, young professionals.
Right.
And there's plenty, so.
Yeah, can I have your card?
Oh, yes, yes, I've got plenty of those too.
But these people, if you had somebody else in there, would not be an employee of yours. They would have their own tax ID, right? They bill the clients from their own time?
I guess that would be up to the restrictions of what, under the city. I don't really want to employ people. I've managed people before, and
It causes stress.
yeah, it causes a lot of stress. Yeah. So having somebody have their own, I mean, they could be under Heart and Mind, but be contract employees. That's what Prairie Wellness does. They're contract employees, but they're under their own. They don't have their own name, but they're under Prairie Wellness, but they have their own tax
Contractor,
ID.
yeah, I'm familiar with that. Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you, Rhonda. Okay, we'll go ahead then and close the public portion and go to board deliberation.
I just don't know if enough has been thought out about this yet. I don't feel concrete enough to say, yeah, let's go ahead and allow this. There's too many ifs. I just don't feel comfortable with it. If she could do it on her own, that would be fine, but saying that she's representing couples, again, if there's stress management, the couple's gonna come in separate cars. So there's more cars than the one we were thinking of. The employees, even as independent contractors, are not employees. And that's what she was talking about, the name that goes in. I mean, I worked under an independent contractor basis most of my life. I just don't feel comfortable that we know enough about it for the space that's available.
Other thoughts?
My concern is that it doesn't feel like a home-based business. It feels more like a office situation where you would hire folks, or rent out space to other professionals. And what we were posed with was, Bert crossed through individuals and said employees. So an employee to me says, you work for me. You are my employee and you get this desk and chair and you do that sort of thing. So I think we've kind of veered away from that a little bit through the discussion. And then it seems like, I don't know, without getting a tape out and measuring, it seems like more than one half of the area of one floor was proposed to be used. So, maybe if Rhonda would like to have one employee, then that would make sense. That would limit the number of cars. There's a lot of cars. It's going to be some traffic when you're looking at numerous appointments daily for that kind of a business, which makes sense. That's how they operate. And of course, you're going to have people, and you're going to have people in cars coming and going.
And the other two individuals working there need to park someplace.
Right.
An independent contractor can set their own hours, their own times. And an employee, you can tell them where to park and where to do this, and you're responsible for paying their taxes and everything else. So there is a fine line, and this is not an employee that she's looking at situation.
I feel like I have caused this in part this concern about the employees. The code reads individuals, so it's two unrelated individuals can work for the home-based business. It doesn't specify employees. I did change that myself in consultation with Bert to employees because we understood that she would be offering services where other clients would come in. So she would have herself and two other individuals, and then the people coming into them. So I don't think we were, as staff, necessarily recommending that they had to be employees, but rather we wanted to make it clear that it wouldn't only be 3 people at that office every day. It would be 3 plus the people that are coming to consult with them. That does not is not intended to take away from or change your mind about the other concerns that you've raised. I just wanted to feel like there has been a lot discussed about the employee, and it wasn't that we were limiting it to have to be employees, but rather we wanted to acknowledge that there be 3 staff people and then whoever else they were bringing onto the site.
Okay.
So Glenna, to go with that, then if we look at the normal requirements for home occupations, which would be like 10B in the code, no more than 2 non-resident individuals shall be engaged or employed in the business.
Right, so again, it
so
normally
that phrase
says
still
individuals.
stands,
The
right?
individuals would be, that wouldn't be accurate, because if she has 2 other people working and then their clients, it wouldn't just be 2 individuals.
Okay, so does that go to the concerns that we've expressed then, that, yeah, we're expanding this a little too far?
Or the parking.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, we've kind of closed that part of the hearing for now. The parking might be part of a concern, but I don't think the entire concern here, at least from my perspective. But I would like to hear from other board members on any thoughts before we consider any motions one way or the other.
Are these hours just standard hours that we have in typically? Or is this what her business hours are?
The code requires 9:30 p.m. to 7 for ceasing of operations. I guess I need to look at the conditions and see what that says, but yeah, so those mirror the code language.
Those are standard.
But we could change those if we wanted to.
Yes.
I'm looking on page 36, just for information, is what I'm throwing out here as I'm reading this. It says the basement contains 1928 square feet of unfinished space. Appellant's proposing to finish 600 square feet. So that is less than half.
It's a third.
But we're looking at, yeah.
Yeah, it's less than a third according to Bert's calculations. I'm not sure if it looks that way, but
Well, it sounds like she's
not
trying
really
to,
counting.
this is a business and she's gonna try and have complementary services. This isn't like she's opening up her home and she's gonna have a gym in part of it.
Right.
We're gonna have a catering service in one wing of it, and then she's gonna have her counseling service in
Yep.
another part of it, so. And I think this is her own home. This isn't like she needs this to make this business work financially. I think she's doing this because this complements what her clients either currently have or need, and she's gonna put it all under one roof. So, from a parking standpoint, I think if she wants to have an effective business, she's not gonna have people lined up and have valet parking in her driveway. People are gonna have to park on 38th Street or park somewhere else. And I had to do that when I took my kids to the orthodontist. Same situation. So I think I'm inclined to try and work through this to where we can be comfortable with some of the language that we need, but to let her try and function within the, you know, the parameters that she's trying to establish for her own business.
Yep.
Those are my initial thoughts.
I think we're just kind of assuming that she's going to break these conditions that's been set forth by staff without given an opportunity to do anything. And listening to her presentation, I don't think she has any intention to want to have congestion with parking and the comment she made, at least, that's not what she's planning to do. I think she wants to work within the conditions that were set forth by staff, so I'm inclined to give her an opportunity.
Okay, well, I might just round the bend here then. In general, a permit is required. Even if all the conditions are met, the reason the permit is required to be reviewed by this board is for us to ensure that it does fit in with the neighborhood. You know, she's not asking for a variance, she's not asking for exceptions, but that's why these come in front of us, so that we can make sure that even if she intends to meet, you know, the requirements for the number of people, is it still going to be in context with the residential character of the neighborhood? I would say from what I've heard, right now she's 5 blocks away. I'm assuming it's a commercial zone business, but she's just herself there. She doesn't have these other services or other clients. So by moving it home, she's not only bringing what she's doing now home, she wants to expand on that. So to me, when I see that, I'm concerned that, yeah, we're bringing truly not just a home occupation, we're doing a business expansion, which could happen in a commercial district just fine, and we're bringing that into a residential district. And even if we have other houses that have orthodontists or architects or lawyers in them, I would by and large, unless there's evidence presented, believe that either those are in a proper office professional district. But when I look at this in an R3, the house to the left and right are residential uses only. Even if they're multifamily residential, that's what this district is. This is the smallest house. It's a Tudor-style architecture. It looks like a single-family home. I feel like we've got a little too much that we're going to be trying to pack in here in a single-lane drive, and maybe taking the home occupation a step a little too far. For the character of the neighborhood, which is still residential in nature, versus the potential intensity of the use. So I kind of remain concerned with that. But I always like to stay positive, so if somebody wants to make a motion to look at granting the special permit, I'd certainly be interested to see where that might go.
I'll make a motion to grant a special permit, just to see where it goes. Yeah, that's why we're here.
All right, so we've got a motion to grant the special use permit by John, second by Marlis, and I'm assuming it's because you agree with the staff report and reasoning and conditions. That's your reasoning therein, correct? Okay. All right, all those in favor of granting the special permit request as presented and subject to staff recommendation, raise your right hand, say aye. 1, 2, 3. All those opposed? All right, that's 3. So by default, yes, we have a tie. You always have to have 4 votes to be approved. So that motion fails. Glenna, from this perspective of the board, are there any other motions that we could entertain to potentially keep the special permit alive, or does it just die on its own unless a member who voted against it would want to bring it
I think
back
you would
up
have
with
to
conditions?
move to reconsider it. I'm going to check your rules.
Okay.
And potentially with approval, but subject to something,
Okay.
some change of some sort.
All
I'll
right.
double check your rules right now.
Since that motion failed by default, then the item fails. But if we wanted to come back to that yet in the hearing, could we do that? So, I mean, do you want to take a break here for 5 minutes and you review that? Or could we move on with the next item, and could we bring it back up during
Well, I
this
think
hearing?
that this is your last item.
Oh, it is, that's right,
Yeah.
okay. Well, wait,
not
do
6
do we have
o'clock yet.
14? Yeah, we have
Oh,
14, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because I don't want to put you on the spot tremendously here, but,
Well, if you don't mind giving me just a minute.
Sure.
I mean, I should be able to
Yeah.
find it.
okay, we'll go to a commercial break and talk about the next free scrub day.
Which is when?
Yeah, it's usually the third Saturday of each month. Call Public Works at 283-4950.
Or you can check the government website, Des Moines.gov.
Yeah,
They got a
or
new site now.
dmgov.org. So there's your public service announcement. The third, yeah, because the third Saturday of the month just went by, you bet. But those happen through November, so. Okay, without carrying that too much further. Oh, we could have lots of,
We got some background noise.
yeah, cars parked on city streets and we can park on some streets.
Tight driveway. You know, without looking at expanding the driveway, which then, what this talks about, item number H, no alteration of the residential appearance of the premise shall occur, so that would definitely be a difference in appearance for the residents, so I'm not sure that that would make sense, but I think if she were limited to one other employee or one other person, or individual, let's just call them individuals, who could be affiliated with her home-based business or not, that to me would be more appealing. I think that would
You
help.
go for 2,
Yeah.
not 3.
So since she
Herself and
voted
another person.
against it, would that be enough reason of change in circumstance for a member that had voted against it to bring it back for further consideration?
Well,
Well, she voted against it, and she's suggesting it.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is that good enough?
Or I wonder if you,
grounds?
can you not expand your parking in the back?
Well, see, and this all comes back to if we want to reconsider it
Right,
to,
that's
to
what-
reopen it
let,
anyway.
let me state it a different way.
Yeah.
The motion failed.
Yeah.
Someone can make another motion.
Right, okay.
Typically, the other motion would be for denial. If a reconsideration, according to your rules, really is the appellant filing a new application and asking for a consideration of change of circumstances, and you have to first find that the circumstances have changed and then act on that. And we set the agenda that way. With that said, I think maybe I am overthinking this, which is your motion failed. That does not preclude someone from making another motion.
Right, and not to put you on the spot, and the only reason I brought this up is since this fails by a tie, if there was a general majority that said no, I wouldn't say, oh, is there a motion to reconsider?
Right.
But this failed by default because there weren't enough positive votes because it was a tie. So,
There's nothing that precludes the board from making
Okay.
another motion.
do you want to make another motion to reopen?
I'd like to reopen the vote and make a motion to approve the business, but only one other individual besides the owner be employed or engaged in the business upon the premises. So I would change item B, which is, well, I don't want to change the section, but let's see where it would be changed.
Number 2.
Condition number 2, thank you.
Right, yeah.
No more than one non-resident individual shall be engaged or employed in the business upon the premise. I think that would satisfy the issues I have for parking.
Okay. All right, would there be a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All right, so we got a motion by Cindy, second by Dave, to grant the special permit, subject to a limitation that there's only one additional non-resident individual engaged or employed in the business. All those in favor of that motion, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? Okay, so that carries. So, that may not be entirely what you wanted, but you can have your home occupation and 1 additional employee. And if business is that good, then I'd love to see you fill in some commercial space in downtown Des Moines or the west side there. Okay. All right, well, that concludes item 10 with that reconsideration. So good job on some thinking on everybody. Then that will bring us to item 14. And item 14 is, I'll go back to this and find it, a variance and exception request at 3708 Southwest 13th Street. Maybe done that.
So the subject property here is a kind of an irregular shaped piece of property. However, it should be noted that the home that was established on this is probably the oldest in the area. It was built in the 1890s, so
Wow.
from that standpoint, the surrounding context of residential development is much younger than this property. You'll see that in a second here. And, you know, some modifications have been made to the house, but it's hard to see, but this is a brick kind of Victorian era. It has the little turret right here. And even the addition that probably came later was done in brick. The front has kind of a stone veneer. This is facing Southwest 13th Street. The other street is Birch Lane, which is the side that we're probably more interested in. This is looking at the existing garage from Southwest 13th Street. It actually sets a little bit north of the house. And then if you go around back, you can see that garage coming off of Birch Lane. And I know that the lighting is a little bad here, but this is actually a 3-car garage with a driveway, and it was constructed of brick as well. I thought I had a picture of the garage. I think there is in the packet provided by the applicant. Actually, maybe not. You can present it when it's your turn. Okay, yeah, go ahead and present those when you get a chance. He'll have some shots of what it looks like when he gets up here. So what's being asked for is going over, it is about a ½ acre parcel overall, but they're still limited to the 1,000 square feet of accessory structures. Well, they have this existing garage here already with a driveway, and it's a 3-vehicle garage, but it's not tall, as you can see, and they're wanting to house a recreational vehicle, which is substantially taller. What they're proposing to do is angle off the driveway here with a taller structure. And right now they're proposing kind of the pole type structure. They've kind of presented the alternate design for the dimensions. They really want the 18 by 42, which puts it into a variance of that area provision. But they've also shown that a 14 by 40 would probably accommodate that vehicle, which would keep it in that exception, whether the aggregate total would be under 1,500 square feet. So just keep that in mind when we get to the staff recommendation. One of the concerns about staff would have, whether it's variance or exception, it needs to be found in the essential character. So there's two primary concerns here with what's being proposed, just on the face of it, looking at the criteria for both exception and variance. The first one is the angle of and kind of the orientation of the building really doesn't fit in with the pattern or the character of the neighborhood. Most of the structures set pretty much perpendicular to or parallel to the front property line. Now, there is some kind of contributing factors. I think there's a couple of mature trees here, although I see that I think one was removed here, maybe recently in front, so maybe that's not as much of an impediment as it was thought. So this is the yard that we're talking about placing this in. There's no traffic limitation to having a separate driveway. From staff's perspective, I think we would rather see any garage that would be added to this property have its own direct driveway more perpendicular so that the garage is oriented to the street rather than at an angle, especially at the proximity of being that close. Right now, if you look at this, the closest corner would be almost as close as the house is, which is quite a bit closer than the average down the street. So that's one thing that we want to make sure.
What's the front yard setback for this district or in this setting? Is it the 15?
Well, this is a
or-
lot of records, so they would actually, that's not actually technically a
item
problem
because,
here that
yeah,
they're
because I
asking
don't
for
see it
relief
here.
to, but just from a character perspective,
Yeah.
we generally don't want our
And I follow you with that.
accessory structure to set any closer. So
Right. I
if
follow
they are
you.
going to set that close, we want the mass of the building, the shorter dimension of the garage
I
oriented
understand.
to the street, not the longer one. So,
Right. Yep.
when it's that close, especially. So, we're proposing an amended appeal where they would go with the smaller 14 by 40 dimension of the building. We do want the building to be constructed of materials that are more in line with the existing house. Now, I don't think we're expecting a new brick garage that would accommodate an RV, but I think we can, it was typical for even brick houses to have an accessory structure, which was more of a lap-sided structure in our traditional neighborhoods in Des Moines. So we would be more, we think that an overlap siding with hardy plank or vinyl would be more in line with, in keeping with the essential character. We would want the house or the building to also then have the narrower dimension oriented towards the street with, even if that required its own separate driveway. I think maybe there's potential that it could be placed in such a way where you could still bring the driveway in off the existing cut, but there's nothing preventing them from having a separate one if that is necessary to make it function.
So you're saying they can have a separate cut from the curb?
Yes.
Okay.
And their frontage along there is enough that even a separate cut isn't gonna get them in trouble with this percentage
Okay.
of that front yard area. This will be not as frequently used anyway, given that I doubt they're bringing their recreational vehicle in and out daily, but who knows?
Eric, what do you have for a radius map here of concerns?
So I passed the comment cards around and
Okay.
we had the one objection down in this area, but in
Okay.
general. And then the neighborhood association was in support as well.
All right.
I don't think, the people that got notified didn't get the full picture of
Sure.
the proposed layout, but
I thought there were 2 objections.
I think there was one objection that said it was okay if the neighbors were with it, were okay, but it was supposed to be
Yeah,
an objection.
which
but it
means,
was kind of
if
a
it's
wishy-washy
marked-
okay
yeah.
objection, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You can pass
well,
the
let's
cards
see,
back down, I
that there
guess.
might be,
And he said he'd be okay with it if the people on either side were okay with it.
Right.
That's correct, yep.
He's a good mediator.
yeah, and sometimes if it's ambivalent, we mark it yellow, but
Right.
I don't see that on there either. So.
Not for or against at all, then. Eric, in this case, he's asking for an exception of 8 feet over the maximum 17-foot height, so he's got like he wants it to be 25 foot tall. So do you have any concerns even in granting, because you're proposing this amended
I don't
exception?
think we do because of
The height is not your concern?
just the mass of the house itself is.
All right.
I mean, it is a big house on the street.
Yep,
So this isn't going to like dwarf the house or
Okay.
be out of scale from a mass standpoint on that.
And the property is also sizable
And it's
as well?
large and it'll be set apart far enough, I think that, that's, the big concern would be, we don't want it that close.
Right.
You know, kind of with the broadside towards the street.
Right.
Because it doesn't look like they're really wanting to have windows, either. So I think
Yeah.
it's definitely more appropriate to get that overhead door facing the street.
Okay. So you, even with what you're kind of proposing or supporting under that condition 3, yes, the narrower dimension would be parallel to Birch Lane, shall not be any closer to the public street than the existing dwelling. So it could still be about 15 feet from the curb.
Yes, but the,
With a short drive.
much more easy to say it's in
And-
character by having that narrower, side
I
facing
got
the
you.
street.
Okay,
in that
but
case.
it would still be 15 feet off the curb,
Probably. And
unless he
again,
wants to voluntarily
I
set it
mean,
back further.
it'd be better to push it back, because then he could have the thing outside the building.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
if it was me, I'd have it at least far enough back that the RV could set.
Yeah, because
on my
otherwise you
property
can never have
outside
it
the-
hooked up sitting outside.
Right, if you have to, mop it down or whatever, I know if you have a boat, you gotta scrub that down before you put it in the building or.
Right. Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Any other questions for Eric? Okay. All right, applicant, it's your turn. I just need your name and address, and you got up to 10 minutes to present your appeal.
I'm David Piper. I live at 3708 Southwest 13th. It's my RV, mine and my wife's anyway. But, I would like to make a couple of corrections, though. I'm not sure where the 25 feet came in. It's probably going to be just under 20 feet.
Okay.
The walls will be 16 feet in height, and then the rafters probably 3.5 to 4 above that, so right at 20 feet.
Okay. Do you have any kind of drawing or design that shows that as a plan?
Yes, I do.
Guess you want-
How do I turn, can I show my,
Yeah, you just lay them on top of the dot there and the,
Set it anywhere right here.
ah,
Yep.
okay.
You can always go with left.
Sorry, I don't do this very often.
Sure, we
This is the
understand.
first time I've ever, so. What are you looking for now?
just if you do have a scaled drawing from your designer or architect that shows what the height would be. And that's primarily for your benefit. We've had people, oh, they start building and suddenly it's taller than what's allowed or what's been granted. And I'd rather you know ahead of time that you got the right eave height and the right span. So if you say it's only gonna be 20 feet, it's only gonna be 20 feet. I don't know if they have that in specifications or design or,
Well, I was thinking somewhere it showed that the wall's height was 16 feet. I guess I'm not gonna waste my
all
time
right,
trying
no.
to find that
And I don't wanna
particular
hold you
detail.
up on that if you wanted to give a presentation on other things. But again, David, just keep in mind that, you know, you wanna make sure you know what your builder has proposed.
What I intend is that there will be 14 feet of clearance between the slab and the open door.
Right.
Because RVs, the maximum they can be, my understanding is 13 and a half feet, so 14 covers me.
Yep,
16-foot
gotcha.
walls covers that, 3.5. So 20 feet is what I'm looking for.
Okay. There you go. All right.
Okay, this is a photo from the website. Because it's at an angle, its dimensions are kind of off a little bit. It seems narrower than it is wide, but this is where I'm looking to put it. These trees are already removed. These two were dying ash trees that were taken down in 2017. Excuse me. These two were taken down in 2017. This tree and this tree I took down last summer.
Yep.
But I have to avoid the root system from the old trees if it's at all possible, because over the next 5-10 years, that's all going to settle down a foot or more. So I would prefer to have the slab a couple feet away from that at the very least. I would like to be able to back the RV into off of Birch Lane. Birch Lane is very narrow. It is a lane, not a street. So there's not a lot of room for maneuvering. If this is perpendicular, there's just not much room for a truck and a long trailer.
Well, you'll have to turn some 90-degree corners if you get out on city streets with your rig.
Yes, but you can go a little bit wider.
Mm-hmm.
Most city streets are wider than Birch Lane. I guess that's my point. Birch Lane doesn't have a lot of room. As far as the size, I really would prefer 18 by 42. And the biggest reason for that is an 18 by 42 building is going to leave a usable area of about 16 by 40. I want to be able to put in a 40-foot RV. If the slides on both sides are open, you take an 8-foot RV, 3 foot on each side, that's 14 feet by itself. That's why I was hoping for a 16-foot usable inside. That'll also give me room to put some shelves to where I can store camping stuff. There was an objection about the materials. I drove around the neighborhood yesterday looking for buildings that have metal roofs, and I found 7 of them just within a few blocks. You can read 3306 Glover, Southwest 14, Elder Lane. This one on Southwest 12 was just the garage. It was the only thing that had the metal roof. And then these 3 on Emma in about a 4-block space. So I don't think that a metal roof is out of character for this neighborhood. Metal siding on the building, that's very common. I would think that the colors to match the existing buildings and this two-tone picture I submitted, it was, okay. Apologize for the color on that, that's not good. This two-tone is going to be a tan and a brown, which matches the color of the garage. Here's the garage and the house. The house, that's not really brick, that's a brick veneer. You look at it, you wouldn't know it, but I think that's irrelevant. The point is, a two-tone building I think would complement this and still not be outside the character, change the character of the neighborhood. As far as locating the building, I can be flexible on that. If you think it absolutely must be perpendicular to the street, I could move it. I could move it a little bit farther out here. As I said, there's some tree roots I would prefer to avoid, but if I can't, well, then we'll just have to figure out how to get the slab to not cave in 5 years from now. As far as the pole buildings, you really don't know that they're modern pole buildings. They're very durable. The suggested asphalt shingles and the siding is much less durable than a baked enamel steel. Another major factor, I don't know about major, the tax base. This is going to be a $30,000 to a $35,000 building. You know, that's that much more that the city can tax me on in the future.
That's a good point.
Something that I really want to avoid, if I were to have built a smaller structure, and then I'll get a bigger RV, which I do plan in the future, I don't want to come back and say, gee, I wish I'd made this thing 18 inches wider, because you can't go back and rebuild the building in the future. Burglars. If the reason I want it to be a fully enclosed building is I don't want burglars to go along and say, hey, their RV is gone, let's go ransack their house. I don't know if that's a point or not, but the fully enclosed building gives the RV UV and storm protection. Hail is really bad for the covers, you know.
All right, David, you got about 90 seconds left here on your testimony, so if you got any concluding thoughts, we'd appreciate it.
That covers all my points. I'm sorry they're a little bit random. Any questions from you guys?
That's a good point, yeah. Questions for the applicant? A brief one that I would have, David, is, you know, you have some consternation about the width and length, that if staff wants to look at a more limited approach here, you wanted to do 18 by 42. What staff would basically say is they would like to grant you an exception, which they're not telling you exactly how wide or long it needs to be, just the maximum amount of square footage would be allowed. So if you still want to be 18 foot wide, then you'd be a little shorter in length. But the current RV you're pull behind, how long is that?
It's 32 feet.
Okay, all right, so by itself, it's already 32.
Yes.
So you could probably do 18 foot wide and still have that pop-out wing and make that work with the exception, which I think would allow, what, up to 1,500 additional square feet over what's allowed.
The exception is
Yeah.
gonna, I don't think will give me enough square footage.
Well, and that's what you'd have to do, is sit and kind of figure that out, if you want to be 18 wide and X amount of feet long. But I do want to caution you on one thing. When we look at exceptions, it just can't be, gee, I'd like to have the biggest RV possible in the entire world, and so I want my building to be big enough for that. A reasonable residential setting might say, hey, if I got a reasonable sized RV, how can I make this fit? So what I want to look at is the reasonable RV that I see is the one you own now. So if we were to put together a building, what dimensions would work that would allow you to put that in there reasonably? Would 1,500 square feet allow that to fit over top of, again, what's already allowed?
If I was building a building specifically for this trailer,
Yeah.
yes, the exception
Okay.
would work.
Okay.
But I would like to get a Class C RV in the future.
Yeah.
Which is considerably longer.
So then
probably
why
36
not
to
just
38.
store that at an RV lot that allows for storage of those, and you pay monthly rent and,
Convenience and.
sure, which all of us want, right?
Yes.
But does the zoning ordinance allow us to just do what we want for convenience? No, it doesn't. You've got to have the reasoning behind it. So that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we make this fit? The character of the neighborhood, going to what staff says, the intent of the ordinance. So what I'm getting at is that may not allow you to have it as big as you'd like to have, as big of an RV as you might want for convenience.
If you tell me no, I won't like it, but I will accept it. I mean, not a lot of choice.
Okay.
A 14 by 40 is not big enough for the future. And I probably
Yeah,
would not.
and I
build
understand that.
I would probably just put in a slab to park it on, and it gets hailed on and super hot in the summertime, and
Yeah, right, which I totally get that, yeah. And even if you want to do a slab, you might have to check with staff and just make sure that's good.
that would be a whole separate project.
Yep, right, exactly. Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant?
I think just to piggyback on your comments, I think what Mel is trying to explain is that an exception and a variance are very different, and to meet a variance test, it requires, it's more rigid in terms of what's required. So essentially, if we were to say, sure, you can have this variance and you can have this bigger building, then what we're saying is that your land isn't worth anything else. And that's a reason why we have to give you a variance. So that's a tougher test. Just
The amount of the variance would be the equivalent of 40 foot by 4 foot wide. So, not a
Right.
really large,
Right.
but I understand you have your concerns. As far as the approach, I was planning on using those permeable pavers. I don't know if that's a concern here. And rather than a concrete approach, the permeable pavers let grass grow up through it, but you can still back up a heavy RV on it. Effectively, you don't know that it's there.
That'll be up to the city if that meets driveway design standards or not.
Yeah, it's on their private property as long as it's durable.
Durable, yeah. Okay. All right, do we have any other questions then for David? Okay, all right, David, you can go ahead and sit down, and we'll see what the rest of the audience thinks. So, is there anybody here to speak in support? Seeing none, is there anybody here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, do we have any further questions for staff? If none, we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. So what do you all think here?
I think this would be a good project at the exception level. I'm not sure I could support it at the variance level, just because, this is a very unique and very beautiful piece of property and nice structures, and I'd like to see Mr. Piper have a place to house his nice RV. The layout is a little, I understand backing off the street may be a little tricky, so maybe figuring out a way to, he's got a pretty wide driveway now, maybe figuring out a way to set it in there so he can just use that existing driveway without having to do a whole another curb cut and kind of chew up more of his property. He makes a point about the trees. That is true. The roads tend to cause problems.
So, you're in support of the staff recommendation for the exception level? And I think himself, he said, even if you wanted to support that, the applicant said it'd only be 20 foot tall rather than 25, but I might say to give a benefit of the doubt, is that a motion? Because if it is.
Sure, I'll make a motion, but I would change the height to 20 feet versus.
Because I would second it and say 21 just to give him a little.
Okay, give it a little
fudge
leeway.
room.
Sure, that makes sense.
But yeah, I would second that with the same concern. Trying to accommodate someone within a reasonable request, I understand, but there are so many people that want to have car collections and RVs, or I want an RV and my car collection. We have single-family neighborhoods for a reason. There's, if people, as one card said, these kinds of buildings belong on farms or in industrial districts, not in neighborhoods.
I do know there's an accessory structure that's about 15 houses to the north that was there since the 70s. It's probably still there. Just used to be an old barn.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. But, and again, if it was done legally at the time, meaning there were no regulations, but now we do have regulations, and that's designed to put scale on things to make it fit. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and second that with a friendly amendment of 21 foot in height. sometimes they may not get everything they want, but I'd like to give them something that's enough workable.
So in that, is he having to make it the two-tone, I mean, he can't have the metal building, and then he's gotta do it parallel to the road? Is that
According
in
to
there?
the staff rec, it's got to be constructive materials compatible to
Okay.
the structure, unless we want to tear this apart and
I just-
start
No. I'm
start
just-
Lego building how he's going to do it. But that was still a good question, so that the motion's clarified. I think it's
I just wanted to be
clarified as
clarified, 'cause
according to
my
what
mind's
staff
getting
would
fuzzy.
require. So we can see what happens here. So we've got a motion and a second to grant, to deny the requested variance, but to grant approval of a requested exception, subject to numbers 1 through 5 and changing it to 21 instead of 25 foot. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so motion carries 6-0. So David, I'm not sure if that would fully work to allow you to build as big as you want, but you can work with the square footage on width and length with staff and see what will work, okay? That's what we can do for you today. All right. Okay, Bert, for other business, do we have to do elections?
Yeah, we have to approve minutes and then have elections for chair and vice chair.
All right, let's go, that's funny. Let's go ahead and approve the minutes from the last meeting,
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
and I'll go ahead and second. All those in favor to approve minutes, say aye. If you were here
Aye.
last month, that's all of us. Motion carries 6-0. All right, so we have a vice chair who runs the meeting if the chair's not here, and then we have a chairman. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Nathan Blake, since he's not here.
Okay, that's one nomination. Would there be?
Good
any-
reasoning.
Is there a second for that? We'll go ahead and do
Sure,
that.
I'll second that.
All right, second by Dave. Are there any other nominations? All right, then we'll go ahead and vote for vice chair. I'm assuming they do not have to be present to win. So,
In this case, by being present, not being present, he wins.
right, that's how it works in some of this volunteer stuff. Okay, all those in favor for Nathan to be vice chair, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Okay, if anybody wants to be the chair. Are
I'd
there
like
any-
to nominate Mel Pins to be our chair.
I'll second.
I stirred that.
We have a
Okay.
third, fourth, fifth, we have a fifth.
You're most
for that,
kind, but
Mr.
before
Chair.
we get in a big hurry, are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of pins for chair, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Nice, unanimous, enthusiastic crowd.
Yes,
All right.
you do a great job.
Thanks, Mel.
Pleased to work with all of you and hope to continue to do so for another good year for us all. So,
Yay.
Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
all your hard work.
you bet. This hearing is adjourned. Okay.
I grew up on 12th Place.
Gosh, the sun's still shining.